corner pin effect can be done very effectively between Mocha and After Effects. So here you can see a poster that has been tracked, let's widen that a bit, that has been tracked onto the surface of the building through the corner pin effect, and that data was generated in Mocha and then exported and pasted onto a pre-comp containing the poster. Okay, so to go back a step into Mocha, when you're doing corner pinning, sometimes, such as this one here, sometimes you may not actually have any information on the plane that you want to attach the poster to, and you have to offset the surface area, the planar surface here that contains the data for the corner pin, from the actual shape that does the tracking. So just to talk through it quickly, we've got a shape here that's going to track this window because it's roughly coplanar, or on the same plane as this wall, which contains no features that we could track. So we take the data, the tracking data, that tracking data is then applied to the planar shape, and that then can be sent out to After Effects, those four corners. Now this video looks at how you can assist in this kind of offset tracking, where you have a planar surface that is taking data from something that is not very close to it, so it needs a little bit of help, and that help comes in the form of these reference points, and these reference points are attached to actual visible objects in the scene, again coplanar with the planar shape, that can be found frame by frame, and they in a sense reinforce the planar structure with these yellow lines. So if you want to imagine these as kind of struts or sticks that kind of hold the corners in place after the tracking has been done. So remember, it's based on the tracking data first off coming from this shape here, and then once the surface plane has been pushed out here, it's reinforced through these reference points, and these reference points add another layer of work to the corner pin effect, but they also allow you to get more accurate fluid corner pin effects. So just to talk through how we would start this, I'm going to switch off this one and lock it and just start from the tracking, and I'm going to track this window with an X-spline because I know just by looking at it that it's got enough pixel differences in texture and planes of information there in the windows and the window frames that I'll be able to get a good track. Then I pull the surface plane. If you don't have that, click on the S button here for planar surface and click and drag that out. And get it lined up roughly with the perspective of the building. Now, you'll rarely get it perfect if you're using a camera with a wide angle lens, because what you'll notice that the closer you get to the edge of the frame, such as here, as the image moves, or as the camera tilts in this case, the distortion occurs at the outer edges, so things will start to bend and warp slightly, which will often kind of upset the corner pin effect. So that's why it's never a good idea to do them on very, very big sweeping movements. So this probably isn't the best example of a clip, but it's good enough to get it to understand the procedures involved. Okay, now I've just noticed here I've accidentally put my shape out here, so I'll need to track forward and then come back and track backwards. So I'll do that. Track forwards, and then go to previous keyframe, track backwards. And what you'll notice, even by looking at it, there's a little bit of wobble creeps in here to the planar surface, because it's taking its point of reference at the track from up here. Then it doesn't quite know exactly how it's supposed to move, because it thinks essentially that it's here, but we're offsetting it out here. Okay, so what you do from here on in, once you've got your track done, is to make it easiest, you put the playhead at the start, just so you start in the first frame and work forwards, and click the Adjust Track tab. Now, what that gives you is it gives you reference points, the ability to nudge them around, and then export your data when you're done. Well, what you'll see when you go into the Adjust Track is you get these red boxes with X's. from the get-go, before you do anything, these are your master reference points, and this is where you tell After Effects where you want to take information from. That can be followed frame by frame, that can be kind of locked in, and can lock the planar surface a little bit more into the shot. So I'm going to take that little dot there at the top, and I'm going to take this section of the top of the window here. I'm going to take the corner of this ledge, and I'm going to take the bottom corner of this section of the window frame. Okay, so these are my pieces of information. So if I can tell Mocha frame by frame where these need to be, then they will essentially reinforce or lock that planar surface into a more logical shape for this shot. So from here on in, you work with the following process. You identify which reference point you want to ensure is in the same position frame by frame by identifying it down here. So at the moment I've got bottom left selected, and that refers to the bottom left here, and you'll see that it has a little indicator there, a little circle or a little inner box telling me that this one is currently selected. If I switch to the bottom right, you'll see that one becomes selected. Okay, so I'm going to use the bottom left first, and I'm going to basically pull the playhead along. And when I pull it along, it's going to show me this master frame here, whoops, on the top left if I don't hover over it, and wherever I move the playhead to, it'll show me that current frame, and then I can make comparisons to see if it has moved or if it hasn't moved. So you'll see here it moves ever so slightly to there. So what I do is I click on auto, and that does a search for that part of the image, and it should just kind of realign it, which it does. Go a little bit further. Now incidentally, you can use the scroll wheel to scroll forward to go through the timeline in that direction, and click nudge or auto, and every time you see it just drift off, put in a keyframe, and then come all the way through and see if you can get it to stay fairly static to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so that one looks okay. So I'll switch to the bottom right. Same process. I'll come back to the start and then move forward. You'll see this one drifts a little bit. So what you probably notice, you get more drift the further you get out towards the edge, because the image is starting to distort. And some of them will just require more and more keyframes. Some of them will require you to go every keyframe, as you'll see shortly. So this is particularly problematic. So I'll come back to it in a moment. I'll go top left, right up to the top. Come back to the start. I'll just click on the back to start or in point. So this one is a little bit easier to find. Again, it's not as far out towards the edge. It does need to be realigned there and there. And I'll just keep doing that on and on and on, and then I'll go to the top right and do the same thing and just try and get it to match. Okay, so you'll see it does drift a little bit there towards the end, and I could start keyframing and nudging and finding. Okay, so that is the process. Now I have one that I've just worked on for a little bit more a moment ago, and it's this one here, and you'll see it's pretty much the same, roughly the same kind of points that have been looked for, and each one has been followed and tracked. And if you look at the, I think it's the bottom right, you'll see that there are a lot of keyframes put in there. Bottom left, almost entirely this middle section has keyframes. Top left, hardly any. Okay, so the basic idea is that the track should do most of the work for you when it tracks that window, and everything that you do here on in will reinforce it, but sometimes parts of the image will give you more trouble than others. Some parts of the image will be easier to find. These little features here might be easier, sorry, these ones might be easier than these ones, for example. But the idea then is you export the data directly from here and back into After Effects for the usual process then. So I could go new solid and paste. And that's the general idea there then. Okay, so you get your object tracked into the scene a little bit more stable with the assistance of the Adjust Track tab.